the Creative Chats podcast with Mike Brennan. Welcome to another episode of Creative Chats. It's the podcast for artist makers and content creators where we talk about creativity, the creative process, and story. I'm your host, Mike Brennan. I'd love to invite you to stop by dailycreativehabit.com. I have created all sorts of resources for you because I truly believe that when you create, we all win. So I want to see as many of you stepping into your creativity fully, closing the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And I want to help you do that. So I've created resources like the Daily Creative Habit Journal. I've written a book, Make Fun a Habit. I have all sorts of free resources like this podcast and a Facebook group called Daily Creative Habit. Also, the paid membership for Daily Creative Habit, where we get together with like-minded creators, all pushing in the same direction, encouraging each other, and saying we're going to show up every single day to create something to get our work out there into the world. So if you would like to be a part of any of those things, again, stop by dailycreativehabit.com or simply visit my website, which is mikebrennan.me. Hey friends, for this episode, I'm bringing part 2 of my Strategic Sparks talk that I delivered at Digital Summit's event. And if you haven't listened to the previous episode, I highly encourage you to go back and listen to that so you can hear the full message. And I hope that this gives you the creative spark that you need in whatever creative projects or creative job, whatever you're pursuing creatively, that this will give you some inspiration and some practical steps that you can take to pursue those things. So without further ado, here is my part 2 of Creative Sparks. The third thing is play. Now, I know this is another one of those like, play? What does that have to do with work? I wrote a book called Make Fun a Habit, and I hear that pushback a lot. Like, work's not supposed to be fun. I'm like, maybe you're doing it wrong. Because I think you can inject fun and play into things. And I think, matter of fact, it's necessary. When you play, you're in an open state. You're curious. You're asking questions. The pressure is off. You're not simply just trying to nose to the grindstone and push through and push through and push through, but you're going and asking things that you wouldn't normally ask because you're giving yourself a place where it doesn't really matter if this actually becomes something useful or not. I'm playing. Kids play naturally. And as we get older, we lose the ability to play. We lose that ability to explore, have fun, experiment. And we actually say, well, when I'm done with all these things, that's when I'll play. Like when I retire, that's when I'll play. When I have a long weekend, that's when and we defer fun and play. And the problem is, again, a lot of times that never happens, never comes. And so I'm like, what if we actually, instead of having fun and play be a reward of a process, what if we actually made it part of a process and had this place to ask questions? How will I play today? And I know you may be thinking like, I don't have time to play it, or nobody's gonna pay me to play, or many other objections rise up in your head. But I want you to understand, we're not talking about this useless activity, this checking out. We're actually talking about putting yourself in a place where your brain stops pushing at problems for a minute, you let your guard down, and maybe you start to experience some ideas that wouldn't come otherwise, because again, the pressure's off. There's this really cool part of the process here where when we're playing, all of a sudden we're getting curious. We're asking, what about that? Or what if? What if I took this and put it together? I'm getting curious about that, and that leads to experimentation, right? If I'm trying different things, I'm like a mad scientist. I'm just throwing things in and seeing what happens. And maybe something blows up, and now I know like how not to do something. But it's important that we have a place to work this out Because if we're ever truly going to get to innovative ideas, if we're ever truly going to express creativity in a way that's not just copying what the industry is doing or what somebody else has handed us or somebody else's vision, but actually we can contribute something of ourselves, our own ideas, we need a place to work this stuff out. And so engaging in a process like this, we're playing, we're getting curious, asking what if, we're starting to experiment, break things, see what happens, gathering data, logging results. Now I know 99 ways of not to do that, right? Maybe I found the one way after. And it's spurring our creativity. Because now we're thinking about things that we wouldn't normally think about. Now we're arriving at conclusions. We're arriving at maybe procedures and products and services and things that were once out of sight. Do you ever notice how you get those ideas in the shower, right? We talk about that all the time. Man, I had this really great idea in the shower, and then I got out of the shower and I continued on my day, and the thought just left, and now it's gone. By the way, they do make waterproof paper and a pen that you can actually write stuff down in the shower. No joke. That may be for some of you. That may be your takeaway right here. You're going to go on Amazon, you're going to order that, and it's going to be waiting for you when you get home. It's because we're in this state of, I'm not trying to overwork something. I'm not overthinking something. I'm not pushing at something so hard. There's no pressure on right now. I'm simply in the shower, my mind is blank. I'm kind of in this play state. And I'm open. That's also usually why it happens when we're going for a walk, or we're taking the dog for a walk, or we're out somewhere else and these ideas come. Because we've given ourselves a break, a place to pause. And all of a sudden, this stuff starts to come. We start to enter into this cycle, asking what if, experimenting, breaking things, figuring some things out that we wouldn't normally. I had the opportunity to lead a workshop with this group of individuals who were educators in Tennessee. And I love doing these kind of corporate trainings and workshops and getting with people who they have a lot to do. There's a lot riding on them, right? They're teaching kids, and there's a lot of things that they need to do procedurally, a lot of hoops to jump through to make sure that they have things all buttoned up. And so there's a lot of pressure. And so I'm meeting with them, and again, this is based off of my book, Make Fun a Habit, and I'm talking through some of the principles at work in this book and how they can implement them. And I start everybody out by saying, okay, I'm going to put some music on, and when the music's on, I want you to take the roll of toilet paper that's on the table right now, and I want you to just go nuts. And they're like, what? Are you serious? And I can see it. There are a few people who are in the room, and they're like, I was waiting for this. I can't, and they're all in, and before you know it, there's toilet paper flying all over the room. People are wrapping other people up, coworkers. They're just like high-fiving each other. They're having the best time ever. And I'm like, what's happened here? They've entered into a state of play. Now, for some people, this is not play for them, right? And I get it. Maybe you're here today. You're like, that's not dignified. That doesn't seem like fun to me. And part of this, I say, know what your fun and play looks like, because it may look different than your neighbor. I'm not talking about having confetti in your pocket and throwing it around and having pizza parties and, blowing a kazoo, okay? Maybe that's part of something, but that's not really what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is entering into a place where you can be free to access some things that are out of reach currently. And I don't know any employer who would go to their employees and say, you know what, I don't want you more engaged. I don't want you contributing more ideas. I don't want you showing up alive. I want you to just simply clock in and clock out. Because that's, for many of us, that's our existence. I need to do my tasks. I need to do them well enough, clock in, clock out, and then I can't wait to go. And then I can do whatever I want to do. How much better of a work environment would it be if people came in and they're like excited and they're like, I had this crazy idea. I don't know if it's going to work. Something may blow up. Can we find out? Right? Like these ideas that can be brought forward, and maybe they actually change the way that something's done. And I know, heaven forbid, it's like, this is the way we've always done it, right? That's a lot of times the feedback we get. But we're like, what if there's a better way? What if there's a more efficient way? What if we actually valued innovation rather than just gave it lip service? And creativity all of a sudden becomes so much bigger. And it can actually change a company. It can actually change an industry. This is where ideas come from and get pushed forward. When people get brave and they're willing to look a little foolish, to play, to maybe throw some toilet paper around. And you know what the beautiful thing is? This was from the event organizer. And basically, she just says, look, my team was empowered to go back to their students and their leaders. They're equipped to evaluate where can we inject more fun into what we're doing. That's going to make a difference for the kids that they're teaching and leading, for the teams that they're leading. What would it look like if this was fun? That was a question that I left them with. And then they started workshopping around some tables. And because we had just previously thrown some toilet paper around the room, the stakes were lower. The guards were down. The ideas were freer. All of a sudden, they started reaching some ideas that they couldn't wait to go and implement. That would make a difference, not only for them and how they show up, but also in the people that they're leading and the work that they're doing. Number 4, finally, celebrate your wins. I don't know about you, but I have a hard time celebrating because I'm so focused on the next, I have a hard time sitting in the now. And I think that's what happens to a lot of us, especially as we're creating things. And especially in technology, everything's moving faster and faster, and it's always about what's next. You're only as good as your idea, right? Your last idea, and you always have to do something next. But learning to sit in the now can actually teach us things. It can actually show us progress, which is important. If we don't track, we can't measure. And if we don't measure, we can't celebrate. Part of the reason why I show that mosaic image of all the pieces of art that I did for 12 years, that was my way of tracking. The end of each year, I would make this mosaic. And it was all the images of that year. And I could look at it and I could see, oh, here's where I had that breakthrough. Oh, here's where things went off the rails. Here's a whole bunch of work that's really bad. But you know what? I had to get through the bad work to get to the good work. I can see it. It's all right there. And then as I put it together more and more and more, it's my way of celebrating, of going, it wasn't just me showing up and doing things and going I know that I worked, I know I did things, but I don't really know what that looked like. It just kind of evaporated. It gave me a place to track and measure so that I could look at, so I could see, hey, keep going. This is doing something. This is leading someplace. You're producing something greater. This is a journey. This isn't just a one-off of whatever the particular thing is that you might be looking at. And so if we don't learn to celebrate, we miss and rob ourselves of the opportunity to encourage ourselves to keep going when things get hard, when we're maybe not as disciplined or maybe not as inspired. I want to ask yourself, how am I rewarding myself? When I show up and do the things that I said I was going to do, how am I rewarding myself? And you may be thinking that's not a big deal. That's what I'm supposed to do. It's what I'm paid to do, right? That's part of the deal. But if you start asking yourself, how can I reward myself in this? You will encourage yourself to keep going. You will see the progress. You'll be looking for, where have I been? Where am I now? And then where am I going? Instead of always, where am I going? Where am I going? Where am I going? Where am I going? And we miss all the amazing things that are behind us. These shoes, some of you are like, good God, man. I'm wearing the ones over here right now. These were how I rewarded myself when I finished my book, Make Fun a Habit. I had set out to write this book in 30 days. And it is short chapters, more of like a manual that you can kind of dive in and out of. And there's some experiences that I share in there, some stories, some illustrations, and there's also some very practical things in there that help people engage with their own sense of creativity and fun and play. And so for me, it was important to mark the moment that I did this. Like, yeah, I'm holding a book physically, and that's proof, but I wanted to reward myself with something. And I saw these sneakers online, and I was like, those look really fun. I think I need those. And there was like a buy one, get one. And I was like, score, that's even better. So I ended up getting these, and this is my reminder, because every time I look down, every time I'm wearing them, every time I see these, it reminds me, hey, you showed up. You did something. You created something and put it out into the world. Keep going. Keep doing that. Do more. Hatch more ideas. Reward yourself, because what gets rewarded gets repeated. When you know that you've done a good job, you'll come back for it. I want to leave you with an exercise, something really practical right now. And this exercise is from my book. It's called Monster Mashup. And the idea here is brainstorming. It's taking ideas that seem unrelated and mashing them up together, much like Frankenstein. So here's what I want you to do. I want you on a piece of paper or a tablet, whatever, however you want to write this down, record this. I want you to make these 3 columns, A, B, and C. And we're going to start with something that is kind of ridiculous, but that's the point. Because again, it's lower the bar. So you're not stressed. You're not trying to solve a specific problem right away. It's coming. I'm going to model something for you that you can then apply. But this right now is just, hey, we're going to brainstorm, so we need to loosen up. We need to limber up, okay? So my example, I took Christmas, column A, and superheroes, column B. These are 2 categories that I want to mash up. And what I would do then is I would sit with a team, or I'd sit by myself, or whoever I'm doing this with, I would sit and say, okay, let's brainstorm as many different ideas as we can for each of these columns. So let's start with Christmas. Okay, go. And people just start naming things, presents and reindeers and elves and Santa and on, snow and all that stuff. So you kind of exhaust, there's no wrong, bad answer. You just record it all. It's a brain dump, right? Because during a brainstorm, that's not the time for someone to raise their hands who's very practically minded and say, excuse me, we don't really have the budget for that, or that's not really gonna, how do we actually, that comes later. We need you people who are like that. But this part of the process is just yes. Record everything you can. Column B, superheroes, same thing. Okay, so capes and spandex and invisibility and villains and heroes and just all the things that you can write. You just write them all down. Then what you just start to do is you start to cross-reference on the list. You take something from column A and something from column B, and you mash them together. And you see, what does this actually come up with? Well, in this case, I took Santa and cape, and it came up with a flying Santa Claus with a cape. And I said, okay, how does that change the story that we know about Santa? Does it give a different spin on things? Like if Santa could fly, he wouldn't need his flying reindeer. How does that impact the story? And you just start asking questions and you start poking around and seeing, what does this do when I mash these 2 things up together? Does it produce a result that's unexpected? Does it produce a result that is maybe sort of expected but slightly off? Those are the kind of things I really enjoy, because I can see the creators kind of like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And you see the thing, I see what they did there, because there's something familiar about it, but they then went off a little bit. I did this piece of artwork that's Captain Abe America, and it's taking Captain America and Abraham Lincoln and mashing them up together. And that's my patriotic hero, is Captain Abe America. And somebody looks at it, there's enough of them to say, oh, Captain America, oh, but wait, I see Abraham Lincoln, cool. So this can be done with anything. Now the point is, do this exercise so you loosen up. And then do it again, but now with things that actually matter to the problem you're trying to solve. Well, okay, maybe the first column has something to do with your budget. because that seems to be something I really need to figure out a way around. Okay, and now what are all the things that we're concerned about that have to do with budget? The next thing, okay, maybe it's an event. And so all the things that you would love to do at the event, and whatever it is, whatever that looks like, you just start mashing things up together and start coming up with a list and seeing, where does column C lead you? Does it lead you to ideas and solutions that you would not think about normally? By the way, this is an exercise that we used to do in a lot of ad agencies. With the art directors, we'd sit around and we would be thinking about these kind of things because it would help us get away from things that were routine and the same old, or what the industry was just doing at the time. It helped us go someplace different. I would love to give you more examples like that. And so I've put together a resource. There's a free workbook. It has a bunch of examples that you can walk through. And it's just designed for you to have some ideas for brainstorming, to meet with your team, or for you to do it as an individual, whatever the issues are that you're facing, trying to give you something so that you're not just staring at the same problem over and over and over again, but that you can actually start to tap into something that gives you a sense of play, experimentation, that you can start to actually implement the process that I walk through of start small, schedule it, play, celebrate your wins. Because when we start to apply those things to something we're trying to create, something happens to us as the creator. And when it takes hold, it can change the way that you approach whatever project you're going to do. And maybe for some of you, this isn't even anything that has to do with work for you. Maybe you've been listening to this and you're like, actually, what's lighting up in me is this hobby or this creative exercise or this creative project that's a passion project of mine that's been on a shelf that has not had an outlet. Maybe this is your day, this is your time for you to be able to step into it and actually be able to get progress on it. And I want to just tell you, because maybe it's been a really long time since anyone said this to you. I believe in you. I believe in you. And when you create, everybody wins. You win because you're showing up fully alive, engaged, passionate, curious. And as you're starting to put things out into the world, everybody else around you wins because they get the fruit of your labor, the fruit of your ideas. And so that's why I'm passionate about creativity, because it has changed my life more than once. And to be able to come and do something with intention and purpose, be actionable, to truly make a difference and be dialed in and know what my passion is, to know what my skill set is, to know all the things I have to bring to the table, that takes a lot of figuring out inside to truly create some things that would make a difference. But I think we all have the ability to do it. It's just sometimes we don't know how. And so I hope that today you've been encouraged. I hope that you realize that if I can do it, even walking away, suffering from depression, trying to come back, trying to figure it out, asking the questions, is this even possible? And for me to be standing here today and sharing the story with you, if it's possible for me, it's possible for you. Don't suffer silently. If you're struggling with some stuff, man, find some people, talk. If you want to talk to me later, talk to me. I'll be around for a little bit. Show up, have agency over yourself, your own journey, your own creative process, and let's get to work.
Thanks for listening today. I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe, leave a rating and a review. It really helps this podcast be seen and heard by others.